Hi there everyone, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. Dungeon Masters sometimes have to deal with a lot when running a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for their players, but sometimes there are just those players that make the game a headache for everyone involved. This is such a story. To the post. I blew up on an adversarial player, DnD 5th edition. By Reddit user Duoplex19. I've got a player that causes a variety of problems. Too many asides, which detract from the focus. Too many inappropriate jokes, to which no one can even banter off of. Complains about every single ruling, even if it's written plain as day in the rulebook. Doesn't know many of the rules of the game, but operates as if he does. Assumes that if something doesn't work out his way, that I must be targeting him as a person specifically. Adversarial to other players as well, constantly arguing with them about the party's goals. Constantly over-suspicious of any and every single NPC, no matter how helpful. He fail roleplays nearly every single social interaction because he's convinced they're secretly out to get him, and have the power to ruin him on the spot if he trusts them. Constantly encourages other players to act out of their character's personality, for, more often than not, no reason at all. Plays a cleric, yet refuses to heal the party almost ever. Not that all clerics have to, but he agreed when making the character that that was the role he was planning to fill, so everyone else made characters without much healing capabilities. Grinds gameplay and roleplay to a halt nearly every sentence by accusing me of trying to cheat the party. Gets absolutely shit-faced drunk 7 out of 10 sessions, and is an aggressive drunk at that. When he does, I have to end the session immediately. We've had about 8 sessions or so, which were less than 2 hours due to this issue. If you're wondering how I've tolerated nearly 40 weeks of this, it's because I have another player who can usually rein him in enough to keep things moving a little faster than an agonizing crawl. Unfortunately, the good player was not able to attend the recent session because of some very justifiable reasons. He even sent me his character sheet for me to play it for him, as well as some detailed instructions on how his character would act in general. So, we ran the session anyways. The party had rescued some hostages, and were trying to interrogate their captors. They managed to get all the information they needed after much pulling teeth based on the problems described above. Then they turned their attention to the hostages. I had the rescued hostages be helpful, obviously. When the party was questioning them, I tried my best to give them helpful and honest answers, but had to take short pauses every now and then while I figured out the appropriate answers. The problem player deemed that as cagey and began threatening the innocent, defenseless hostages with, "I'm gonna bite his testicle off." I really have no words. What? To which I just threw my hands up and said, "F an insight roll, I guess. You just know definitively that he's hiding something from you. Might as well kill him now." I then went off on this player about how it seems like he grinds the gameplay to a halt nearly every sentence by making everything a problem. How if it weren't for that, the party would be more than 4 levels higher and nearing the end of the campaign by now. How I had a full dungeon planned for that session, yet we were stuck on this stupid interrogation for over an hour. This, of course, ended the session. I shouldn't have blown up the way I did. But I was at the end of my fuse, and it's not like I hadn't tried communication either. Nearly every session, me and the good player I mentioned before would take time at the end of the session to try and patiently explain that the game doesn't really function well with that kind of behavior, and that people could have more fun if we focused in a little bit more. We even asked kindly, multiple times, for him to tone it back and not be so suspicious or confrontational. I am all for a good time. Many tables I've played at would consider me even a jokester or the goofball of the party. but never have I made it such an issue as to ruin the experience for others. I know the line, and this guy doesn't. I am now taking a break from DMing that campaign, while I look for this guy's replacement. I had hit sunk cost fallacy with him about 10 sessions ago, but I'm over that now. TLDR, I went off on a player who causes a bunch of problems and hasn't compromised even when cordially and respectfully communicated with. Well, I can't really say I blame OP for losing his gourd there. I mean, it sounds like this player had been an issue for a long time, and OP tried their best to work around him, but the straw just got too heavy on the back of that camel. Now, should OP have blew up on him the way he did? Likely not. But hey, we are all human, and all have our limits. Between the way this player would grind things to a halt, and the constant drinking to the point that they would have to stop the game, I can't say I blame OP for just ripping the band-aid off and booting this player. I mean, they tried talking to him, and that didn't work. So at that point, the time for talk is done, and the time to tell them to walk is in. Hopefully, OP can find a replacement for this player, or figure out a way to continue the game without him. But yeah, I think OP made the right call here. But let's move on to the next DnD horror story, where players of Baldur's Gate try to play the game like it's a homebrew DnD game. To the post. Baldur's Gate Backstories and Metagaming by Reddit user InterestingBuyer285. I recently started playing Baldur's Gate 3 with a group of friends who had never played before. One of my good friends, who I'll call Ranger, was super excited and posted a bunch of messages to the group chat about his planned build and quote-unquote backstory. I shrugged that off as odd, as it's not like you can really pick a backstory. He's also not familiar with the game or the setting, so it's not like he knows any of the relevant lore. Regardless, we set up the time to play, and we all looked forward to our first session. I expected it would be slow going, as they figured out the controls and game mechanics, and delved into the story. That was indeed the case, which I was fine with, but unfortunately, things got much worse once the party reached the Druid settlement. I allowed the other players to initiate all the dialogues, as they had never played before. They stumbled through long discussions about which dialogue options would best suit their quote-unquote backstories. Meanwhile, I had gone through these dialogues many times in the past, so my rogue would go off looting and shopping while they conversed with the NPCs. After an hour passed for them to initiate all the main quest dialogues, we had a bit more freedom to explore the surroundings. As a more experienced player, I suggested there were a few side quests and encounters that we should initiate. Though when I suggested specific places to go, or things to do, Ranger accused me of quote-unquote metagaming. He explained that we should only be using the knowledge our characters have, and he didn't want me to spoil anything for him. The rest of the party seemed to agree, so I essentially shut my mouth entirely. The other players in the party decided to delve into a nearby dungeon. I quietly tagged along with them and allowed them to spearhead the exploration. Soon enough, we leveled up to level 3, and we all selected our subclasses. Some of the other players had asked me questions about subclasses, so I kindly obliged and explained the pros and cons. Feeling like I could openly talk again, I asked Ranger which subclass he had chosen. To which he replied, "You wouldn't know that. I thought we agreed to no metagaming. I am not going to tell anyone until it makes sense from my backstory." I just rolled my eyes and shut up again, but fully realized that this was never going to work. We soon reached the final encounter in the dungeon, which was a battle with some undead. As the other players all grouped together and initiated the encounter, my character snuck off to an advantageous location. The rest of the party was trapped in a corner, getting rushed by undead, while my rogue was picking off undead with sneak attacks. Right after the battle, and right before the session ended, Ranger again accused me of metagaming and that my character must have magical foresight to know about these undead. I told the party that this gameplay style is not for me. I was here to play a fun video game with friends, but they apparently wanted to play a D&D session. I also made a point of saying that making backstories is silly. The writers already created the lore, and players just interact with it. I wished them luck on their campaign and figuring out their backstories. TLDR, I played Baldur's Gate 3 with a group of friends who apparently wanted to turn it into a tabletop experience with backstories. As an experienced player, I was accused of metagaming because I didn't stick to my character's knowledge. Well, it just sounded like, in this case, the players wanted to take a video game based off of D&D mechanics and lore and make an actual D&D campaign out of it. Now don't get me wrong, I can understand the players that never played through Baldur's Gate 3 not wanting OP to spoil, or heck, even guide them through the story of the game. But that's just it. It's the story of the game that has a set track towards an end. Sure, there are so many branching paths that the game can take, but in the end, it's not really a true D&D game with a DM directing things, like it seems like the players wanted. But for real, Baldur's Gate 3 is an amazing RPG, and could be used as an introduction to the world of D&D, or even just the way the game works. But to try to use an already built game with an already built story to run a homebrew D&D campaign is like trying to make a diamond out of coal. Sure, it could be done, but it would have to be really forced. Now, before we move on, Nipsey would like to give you a special request.
Like the video and subscribe. I have a banana, and I know how to use it.
Thank you, Nipsey. I hope they do. But with that, let's move on to our next D&D horror story, where a dungeon master takes things too far with the player characters. To the post. Player character based on my daughter. Huge mistake. By Reddit user NoCryptographer3980. So a couple of years ago, I found this ad and joined a new table on Roll20. I am an experienced player. I started playing when I was 8, more than 30 years ago, and the Dungeon Master seemed pretty unexperienced, but enthusiastic, so I went full support mode. She sent me a form to fill with my expectations, just a fun fantasy game with good role-playing and a few fights, not interested in controversial or sex content. And I prepared my player character, a young elf arcane trickster. For the first time, I played a female character, as I took inspiration from my 3-year-old daughter. I even shared this with the DM. She asked me for a session 0 to be played 1-to-1 with her to test the character, and then we were ready to meet the party and start the campaign. This was the worst D&D experience of my life. The party, a tiefling warlock, unexperienced player with smart ideas and a good attitude. It's so sad that we met in this context. Elf monk, weird. If, quote, summon embarrassment was a spell, it would have taken its name from him. In the first session, he spent most of the time trying to sell, quote, holy images to the cleric, behaving like a junkie who is asking for money. A human cleric, a super passive-aggressive girl, always complaining about her real-life roommates and spreading bad vibes all around. A human paladin bard, the most toxic player I've ever met. He played all session 1, when we were supposed to get to know each other in a tavern, just asking for booze and playing like he was a drunk. In the next sessions, his signature move was to cast Detect Magic as a ritual cast in every room we entered, while he kept walking and talking. The game itself was pointless. After being magically kidnapped, we spent like 3 full sessions in a jail, where we were unable to make anything happen. We found other prisoners magically put to sleep, but we couldn't wake them up. We figured out that it was a flying ship, but we could not change the route. We knew that the crew was sleeping upstairs, but they never show up in 20 hours of boring playing. In Session 4, we finally found a note written by our jailer. The note was a detailed description of his sexual fantasies about our characters. Violent sexual fantasies on my character, based on my 3-year-old daughter. The Dungeon Master said she asked a friend, a creepy guy that had been added to the channel and used to listen to the sessions, to write them for her. I was speechless. Luckily, the next week, she decided to quit the game because it was too stressful and she had issues in real life. So no need to say that I would have stopped it anyway. TLDR, most boring campaign ever with some very problematic players. The only thing that we found in 4 sessions was a note with violent sexual fantasies about our characters, and I had based my character on my little daughter. Well, that was messed up. I mean, it's one thing for a D&D game to be full of players that are problematic, but to then have a DM that just lets some random dude make lore about his sexual desires towards the characters, and the Dungeon Master allowing that when she knew that OP based his character off of his daughter? Yeah, it was best that that game fell apart when it did. I mean, wow. Now, before we move on, if you're looking for some lighthearted fun, I would like to plug a stream I watch all the time. It's called Midnight Rift Party, where a bunch of friends watch things, from old educational videos to old B-movies, and just have a general fun time making fun of them. Heck, they even do a 12-hour stream called Long Burger every Saturday. Though, due to the nature of the streams, they have to stream on Rumble, because they would get taken down on YouTube due to copyright stuff. So be sure to check them out. Especially tonight, because Monday nights is Pash Bash, where they all watch a crazy soap opera from the late 90s called Passions, which is one of my favorite nights. So come join the riffing fun, and hang out with me in the chat. For all the links for Midnight Rift Party, you can simply go to buffguypillowfights.com. And yes, that is the actual name of the link tree. Plus, I'll be sure to post a link in the description and a pinned comment. They really do deserve more viewers, as it is a really fun show. But with that plug for one of my favorite streamers done, let's move on to a story about a paid Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master that is a bit too rude for his own good. To the post. We can't be heroes, but the DMPC can. By Reddit user Kevin1314171. So, I guess I should start off by saying we hired a Dungeon Master. Hey, why not? $15 a week per head for 5 of us. Whatever, we're adults, and $15 is fine, considering none of us want a DM. I really don't know who's wrong here. It's my first experience with a hired Dungeon Master. We played over Discord, and we're using Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Session 0 went normally. For the Dungeon Master's homebrew, he needed us to be in a party that already knew one another. So, as the cliche goes, we say the scene opens up to us sitting in a tavern, broke, and desperately looking for work. We all showed up with backstories and characters ready, a miracle for my friend group, and some of us had requests. My friend, Fighter, requested that he starts with a talking sword. Nothing crazy, enchanted, or magical, other than it's a sword that talks. He figured it would be a good device for the Dungeon Master to use to throw hooks our way. For me, I was playing a rogue, and I wanted to play an arcane trickster eventually. I asked if I could have a wild magic table for flavor's sake whenever I got spellcasting. Warlock and Cleric didn't have any requests. They just told the Dungeon Master that they're free to use their god or patron for plot hooks to make his life easy. He shot down all requests. For Fighter, he actually said it was a dumb idea that he couldn't do anything with. For Warlock and Cleric, patrons and gods wouldn't talk to you about such petty things as your current quest lines. For me, he said no, too much to keep track of for a busy Dungeon Master. This rubbed us all the wrong way, because we felt a certain sense of entitlement, considering we were paying him. Once again, I don't know if I'm in the wrong here or not. Well, I can understand a DM turning some stuff down, especially if it goes against the type of game they were planning for the players, and if it makes it more work. But I don't think the requests were that bad, and the DM seemed to be a bit rude about it. We didn't like how abrasive he was, but figured whatever, give it a shot for a few sessions, and we'll see. Fast forward to our first quest line in Session 5. The local clergy lost a holy relic in the bad part of the city, hired us to go figure out what happened, and hopefully find the relic. We decide we want to ask around the area, where the convoy was last known to be. We ask to make checks to see if there's anyone to talk to. DM says no one wants to talk to strangers. Fair enough. We roll checks for clues around the area. There are no clues. Okay. There's a guy standing there with a necklace that implies he's part of the local gang. We talk to him and roll insight checks. We all fail. Out of character, I ask what the heck the check was set at. Dungeon Master said he had it set at 15. After the first failure, he raised it to 25, 35, so on and so forth, since all 5 of us made checks. I argued that makes no sense, because we're all listening to him speak and all observing at the same time. I said if each one of us tried to pick a lock, would it make any sense for the lock to become a higher DC each time? Again, I don't know if I'm right here or not. Well, I can understand OP's reasoning that the group were all observing at the same time, so the Dungeon Master making the DC higher for each player really doesn't make much sense. But for things like locks, I can understand. Otherwise, a player could just keep trying to pick a lock over and over until they succeed. Though at the same time, you wouldn't have players have to roll an increasingly challenging acrobatics check if they are all jumping over the same gap. Stuff like this is really up to the DM's discretion. And the point is, I think the DM did the wrong thing here. Dungeon Master proceeds to tell me that arguing with a DM, paid or not, is poor form. Well, arguing constantly with a DM would be one thing, but this just sounded like it was one time. I mean, if there is a call that you really don't agree with, I think it's okay to politely bring it up, in my opinion, as long as it's not something that happens all the time. We then roll initiative. It turns out the supposed gang member got tired of us pressing him and decided to start a fight. It was 5v1, and we won, though we made sure to knock him out and not kill him. The fight finished, and the DM chuckles. He once again restates that this is a realistic game with realistic consequences. Then, local militia surrounds us and throws us in jail. So here my group is, 5 sessions in, on our first quest line, with no idea where we're supposed to go, and in jail without bail. We ask out of character, hey, what are we supposed to do here? Dungeon Master shrugs and says to Warlock, hey kid, it's like the real world. No one is gonna throw you a bone. We just go whatever. Let's just short rest and figure out how to get out of this after we sleep. We wake up, still in jail, and all sleight of hand checks fail. I didn't bother asking if he raised the DC each time. All the perception checks fail. We have no magic because we're in an anti-magic cell, and patrons won't help with such trivial matters. This actually kind of makes sense. So cool, what are we supposed to do? And then, the DM introduces his DMPC, a paladin that was protecting the relic. He's in the cell next to ours. We're excited finally, because this is the first hook we've gotten. We tell him we were hired by the clergy to figure out what happened, and this effing paladin holy smites his cell door with his fists. Who's the hero breaking us out? His blonde hair, blue-eyed paladin. We all sat there dumbfounded, almost 2 hours into the session, and tell him there that we're done. He defends himself, but we already started packing our stuff, paid him for the session, and told him we were good. Oh, and just another thing. My friends and I all come from the military and are well into our 20s, pushing 30, with careers, etc. I tell you this to tell you that I skipped an argument we had with the Dungeon Master calling us kids. We took a special offense to that statement after stonewalling us all session, all seemingly to have his DMPC come in and save the day. Well, that does sound like that campaign wouldn't have been any fun. And it really did seem like the DM was just railroading the group and kept making them fail things, just so they would get arrested, so the DM could introduce this overpowered DMPC. Overall, this DM just sounded like he was rude in general. From the way he told the players how he wouldn't include their suggestions by calling them dumb, to referring to an adult player as kid. Though, at least the group realized that this wasn't the game for them early enough, that they didn't spend too much money on the campaign. So here's hoping that OP and his friends eventually find a DM for their group that they can actually get along with. But it looks like we have time for one more DnD horror story, where yet another paid DM is a little too harsh on his players for a paid Dungeons & Dragons game. To the post. Dungeon Master insta-killed characters because consequences. By Reddit user Sassy Finch. It was a paid game. I believe it was about $15 a session. The Dungeon Master said actions had consequences. I thought, okay, that's fair. Our quest was to transport a strangely coffin-shaped crate to someone deep in the forest, with orders not to open it. Along the journey, we started to get hints that there was a live person in there. Concerned, a player opens the box. The recipient of the box, a giant creature, suddenly leaps down from the trees. The Dungeon Master says the player's character is crushed underfoot instantly. So, a new character sheet. Then, one of our characters is arrested for something, and I don't remember it as being a matter of total character dickery. The Dungeon Master says, "If you all don't come up with a way to break him from the jail in the next few minutes, he is going to die at dawn." So we sit around, trying to think of something. But then the character, indeed, dies at dawn. Thus, a new character sheet. Our next quest is to deliver a plantier to someone. Worried, my character tries to take the plantier to the temple for advice. The Dungeon Master says my character feels a sense of dread and considers offing herself as she approaches the temple. Okay, I think. This is obviously a deterrent, and I don't want yet another insta-kill. Not knowing what else to do, we deliver the plantier. The DM shakes his head and says we just doomed the world. So we go to an NPC to ask for advice, and the DM tells us to explain in detail what we did, what we do. The NPC then scolds us harshly. So we go to another NPC to ask for advice, and the DM asks us to explain in detail what we did. I say, "Do we have to tell you again?" And he replies, "You're not telling me, you're telling the NPC." Embarrassed, we tell the story again. The NPC scolds us harshly. Then the DM says we should reconsider telling a lot of people what happened. This was over the span of maybe 4 sessions tops. Mid-session, I packed up my stuff and said, "I'm not having fun, so I'm leaving," and walked out. Apparently, consequences equals I'm an effing sadist. Yeah, I would say that it sounded like the DM was a bit too harsh, especially for a paid DM. I'm sure the players were looking for more of a laid-back adventure that they could actually do things in, without the fear of the DM just out of nowhere one-shotting their characters, which I am sure the players spent time making and developing backstories for. Then, the party inadvertently dooms the world while they had good intentions, and that can be a fun story trope to play with. But to then have all the NPCs do nothing but scold their characters when telling the story of what happened, and not offer any insight or help, basically leaves the players aimless on what they need to do to stop it. Plus, I gotta say that refusing to hand-wave them telling the second NPC the exact same thing and making the players do it all over again is redundant, and that just wastes game time. Though this was a DM that was essentially on the clock, so maybe this was intentional. So, in the end, OP just wasn't having fun in the game, and stuck to the no D&D is better than bad D&D mindset. And like with the previous story, I hope they can find a DM they vibe with better. But with that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you. And again, be sure to check out Midnight Rift Party tonight around 6:15 Eastern Time, and come join me in the chat. But with that, until next time.